There we go. All right, welcome back to another episode of Hammering Down. I'm your host, Keller Hodges, and this is the first time I've had a guest on in a while. This is the first guest in the truck, so we'll see how this goes. This should be an absolute blast. Before we get into the episode, though, I do want to go ahead and give a shout out to people who have subscribed via Patreon. So thank you, Matt, Zach, Harry, Sandy, and Clay for all y'all who have been very generous towards me. If you want to subscribe, there's extra live streams. There's you get early access to other stuff, and you get full access to my Google Drive. So if I take videos of goals, or if I took a video of your kid after the game, you have access fully to that. So just give a little bit extra perks, and we'll see what happens along the way. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We have a massive match coming up tomorrow as you're listening to this, or today, depending on when, or if you're a late listener, because some of you people listen to this afterwards to see how stupid I sounded. And if so, tell me how we did. But it's a massive match of the San Diego Loyal versus Birmingham Legion, which this is the first time these two teams have matched up. And it's a very interesting matchup from, this in the last week, 22. Legion had 4 people in the all USL team, and San Diego had 3. This is also the big storyline going into it. Juan Agudelo takes on his former U.S. men's national team teammate, now coach of San Diego Loyal. To kind of break all this down for me and to everybody else, I'm being joined by a good friend, someone who I talk to weekly on the USL show, someone who's on Orange and Black Soccercast, 2 balls and a mic with one of the greatest segments of all time, segment names. I'm being joined by Mr. Alan Underwood. What's up, man?
Not much. How are you?
Hey, living the best life, man. So,
Right.
what's the name of your segment with 2 balls?
2 balls Underwood.
Incredible. Was that one your idea, by the way?
I think it was just it came out of a discussion about uh, hyphenating last names. So my last name's Underwood. My wife's last name is Ball. She kept her name after we got married. Um, First for she was finishing law school and she didn't want to mess up any of the paperwork or anything. And then it's just like, oh, she's always been Sarah Ball to everybody, so she kept it. And we were talking about hyphenating, how inappropriate it would be as a middle school teacher to have a name Ball Underwood. I would never make it through introductions on the first day of school.
No
Um,
shot.
yeah, or her as a law firm Ball Underwood Esquire. It's just like, how can you can't take that seriously? But that kind of spawned this idea of it'll work for 2 balls Underwood. We can use it there, so it's alive and well. It's a fun segment. Those 2 guys are great. It's a good podcast in general and live show, and they talk about all sorts of sports. So if you're into the fake football, they're doing a fantasy football drive right now where they up against them. So 2 really good guys. Met them through Loyal, and here we are.
So you kind of mentioned the other stuff that you guys do with 2 balls, but whenever it comes to the Loyal itself, what kind of content would people be interested in hearing? Because 2 balls is one of those content whenever you guys talk about Loyal and you're not doing the other sports, I listen to a lot. It's something really enjoyable, but why should other people, I guess, really listen to it?
Yeah, we try to bring a little bit of a fan perspective, but also talk about how the team's playing, what we noticed from the matches. Tony played goalkeeper for a really long time, so he's got a pretty good perspective as well. We have a pretty good rapport with the team. Assistant coach Nate Miller comes on. We'll probably have him very soon. It's called Miller Time, where this guy, I would sit and listen to him talk tactics for hours on end if he gave me the time. So it's just kind of like a little bit more tactics, breaking stuff down, but not getting into the minutia of the tactical makeup like a John Morrissey would do, or you do from time to time as well. But we also have some fun bands, and there's always some pop culture references because I'm a little bit older and Chiva's one of the other guys is a little bit younger, so some of the stuff I say goes over his head, and Tony and I kind of chuckle about that. I think the last time I was drinking out of a Troy and Abed in the morning mug, and so there's a lot of community references, and Chiva was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So Tony and I had a.
The newer one.
It is a
That's
newer one, but Chiva doesn't watch TV, so I
okay.
mean,
Okay, I guess I can follow that one.
yeah, and it's that's it's a fun discussion. It kind of devolves from time to time, but it's usually what happened in the match, highlighting what went well. Lately a lot of that, not a lot, not as much what went poorly. Um, but I know we're gonna have quite a bit to talk about next week with these two games that they played. So it's just a fun conversation. And those two guys like to kind of mix some stuff up. They do pick'ems for Premier League where they have rewards and punishes where they like make each other do push-ups in the middle of like public spaces if they lost their pick'em that match. So it's good fun.
You talked about two of the matches, obviously one of those being against Legion. The other one against Monterey Bay, and that's the most recent match that you guys played. And I really want to talk about this one because obviously we can talk about San Antonio, and I'm sure we will. And we'll probably talk about the 5-0 loss to Los Dos and what happened there. But what happened against Monterey Bay was interesting because I think a lot of people are remembering early season Monterey Bay and not really what they're doing now. Despite not really getting results, Monterey Bay is a really good side now, defensively sound. Obviously, I've always said XG counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. It doesn't really do much, but it shows long term trends. And Loyal put a beating on that back line, and it took a penalty to break the deadlock. What kinda happened there, man?
A little bit of everything. Frank Yallop's been a well-respected coach in the league for a while, or in the United States for a while. He's got that team playing really, really defensive and really well coached. San Diego had a couple good looks, but couldn't get him on frame, and so I think that's a little bit of it. Uh, they started former loyal keeper Anthony Siaha against Orange County, and he's the guy, kind of the catalyst behind this kind of scoreless streak of over 550 something minutes that Loyal was able to break down with a penalty. And you feel a little bit bad, right? It wasn't like a super clear cut guy getting brought down in a box. It was one of these handball ones that I was even a little bit unimpressed by the call, just because I'm not a huge fan of like accidental handballs turning into penalties. Um, but Anthony Siaha has been playing really well. He's this huge dude who has lots of range, can block shots really well. He had some footwork issues, from what I understand, kind of some positioning things, and so he never kind of broke through with Loyal. You're backing up John Kempen, who had probably one of the best seasons in USL for a goalkeeper. So he just wasn't getting minutes. He ends up leaving. Was welcomed back to San Diego. I know the coaching staff was happy to see him. I gave the goalkeeper coach a big hug before the match, and he was really good. And this is something that we've seen with Loyal against Las Vegas, where Romero had just like a
Romero.
credible game and was making these amazing saves. And in USL, when you're up against a keeper that is making saves like that, it's really hard to score, and it can get frustrating at times. So I think it was a really well drilled defensive effort by Monterey Bay, and they've been doing that. I mean, they hadn't lost in what was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 matches, um, including a draw against New Mexico. They beat Orange County, which take it or leave it. Drew Detroit City, which is a quality club. Beat El Paso. So this is a club that's like, you look at the standings and you're like, oh, they're down at the bottom. But like top to bottom in the West, every game is a fight, even if the points are spread out. You can't sleep on any team, especially on this kind of midweek Wednesday. As soon as and it was really frustrating, and you can tell the players were pushing maybe a little bit more than they normally would. But this is what happens sometimes with Loyal against a really well drilled defensive team, is sometimes they get frustrated and they don't score.
That's something that I think a lot of Legion fans are going to take a lot of hope into because Legion have been one of the elite defenses in this league for several years now. it's definitely one of those things that this team just continues to do it defensively, but it's not the same way that a Monterey Bay does, where Monterey Bay is not afraid to put 6 people behind the ball. You know, they will be very sound defensively because of sheer numbers, and it's hard to break down. I've people have heard me rant so many times now about how Legion doesn't do enough off the ball movement to break down those defenses, and talking about those really in-depth tactics like you talked about, but in the end, that's really hard to do. If it was just that easy, they would just do it. You know, some idiot on a microphone could just say, "Hey, just do that," and they'll be like, "We tried," you know. But it's a little bit different out of Legion. We have our two center backs, who and Fanuel Kavita, who's been around forever, and Alex Cronulla, who's actually pretty well known in the SoCal area. Um, but then from there, the fullbacks are good. Our holding midfield is great. We've always had good depth there. So maybe that's something that Legion can take advantage of. But that said, way Legion have been playing, not the same, obviously, because San Antonio's on a different level, but it's tactically similar, and San Diego completely just broke that apart. Well, I say that. The scoreline says that, but if you actually take a look back at the match, not quite exactly how that went down.
Yeah, that first half was really cagey. The team's kind of going toe to toe. I think overall San Diego played the game they wanted to play. San Antonio was a little bit shallow in depth, and I think I said this, previously is, in the 62nd minute, San Diego subbed on their this year's leading scorer and the club's all-time leading scorer, and that's kind of when things kind of opened up. And this is what the difference between San Diego last year and San Diego this year is. Just the attacking options are just amplified, right? Last year it was maybe a striker. Corey Herzog wasn't doing too much. Their left
Well,
wing was a little bit
nothing new there.
yeah, was the left wing was a little bit weak, but you replace Augustine Williams with Kyle Vassell. I mean, that's an upgrade. Then you add Among, which is probably one of the best trades this season in USL. The guy they traded to Colorado isn't in the league anymore, and Thomas Among is he very physical player.
A
You
fleecing, just a straight up fleecing.
Yeah, and I wonder if it was just like a fit issue, like we're not going to get a chance to play him, and we want to get him minutes, and let's put something together. Obviously Nick Moon is an upgrade on that left wing, and then you sign one of the better talents in League One in Evan Conway, and so it's one of those pick your poisons. And unfortunately for San Antonio, they just kind of ran out of gas. They defended really really well, and it was like San Diego was having a tough time breaking them down as well. And it just got to a point where San Diego was kind of worn down. You saw this a little bit with Monterey Bay as well, where they just come at you wave after wave after wave, and it's the left side, it's the right side, it's down the middle, it's Among shouldering, it's Kyle Vassell hold up play. There's just so many options that you're constantly having to run and adjust to, shifting left to right, pressing up, pulling back, and it just wore San Antonio down. And one turned into two real quick, which turned into three real quick. And we've seen this before with even top level teams where that first punch is that gut punch, and then you're trying to recover, and the second one goes in, and then it's San Antonio had a pretty good look after that, and then when they didn't score, it was like, all right, we're doing okay. Then they put that third in, and it was lights out. And you have to tip your cap to San Antonio, who fought really, really hard. They just didn't have the legs to put on in the second half to match loyal substitutes, and sometimes those subs are the thing that make the difference. So I know a lot of people are like, this is a statement win. It was probably the most impressive win for San Diego's history. Last night was really important, getting to 5 in a row, which hasn't happened in loyal history either. The San Antonio win is a huge win, particularly last year where they weren't winning against playoff teams. But I'm very curious to see what this game looks like in San Antonio, because I think it's going to be a much different game, and I think we'll get a better picture of kind of where both these teams are in relationship to each other.
There's a couple guys I want to go ahead and jump on. The first one you mentioned was the guy who really it was the last goal, but it was, I mean, the absolute dagger in the heart of everybody in San Antonio. I've never, even when San Antonio went 2 goals down, there seemed to be a little bit of life there. They didn't really create a whole lot, but there was still a belief of we can. After Cavasel drills one outside the box, you it just so much defeat in everybody's eyes that we hadn't really seen out of San Antonio this year. Kyle Vassell came in from League One, right? The EFL League One, and has absolutely just made a mess of everybody. The only time that he's really been stopped is when he decides to dislocate his shoulder, and even then, that only took him down for like 2, 3 games.
Yeah, he is something else. I got a chance to chat with him because obviously your first question is what is the level of play for USL, and he was like, I thought I was gonna come in here and just wallop everybody. Like no question, I was gonna just roll over everybody. He is very aggressive, very physical, and can shoot right and left foot, which is great. But he was like, these defenses and these center backs are good. Um, Obviously, he had some choice words about some officiating. I think he's learning how to adjust to that because he does play very physical, and sometimes he gets fouls called on him because he's like basically manhandling the center backs. But he is he likes to drop sometimes and kind of link play, which is dangerous for kind of a target man of sorts. But that's also what makes Loyal dangerous is you try to press them and they have this immediate release valve between him and Thomas Among, who is just really quick. He can control the ball. He receives it pretty well, especially in space or on that hold up play. And yeah, he's dangerous in the box. He can score him from outside the box too. So it's nice to see kind of that upgrade. And I think that is one of the biggest differences and an upgrade for Loyal this year is that front line with Kyle Vassell. And he is like very few people make him look small. But yeah, the only thing that's really held him back, he can get a little bit hot. So if you can get under his skin, I think that there's some things there, right? We saw him get the red card against Orange County where it turned into an MMA fight, which he has trained. That's what he was going to do before he went professional soccer. He trained for MMA fighting. So like that's what kind of attitude he has. Loves wrestling, he loves fighting, and he can play very boisterously on that front line. But obviously the Loyal fans absolutely adore him for what he's bringing to the team.
If people haven't seen Cavasel going at, the Orange County and that brawl, honestly, one of the better sports fights you're gonna see anywhere. I mean, we've seen some good baseball ones, we've seen some okay NBA ones. NFL, I don't even consider the NFL to really have fights. They punch each other in the helmet, which never seems smart. No one ever actually takes off the helmet except for the one time the guy did, and that was big news. But I mean, I don't know. That was one of the better scrap ups that I've ever seen on a pitch. It's funny that you mentioned the rest because one of our guys, a guy who's absolutely beloved here in Birmingham, he doesn't get a lot of playing time, but Eddie Horvat, the Croatian we signed, our number 9, he's a backup guy. He doesn't really fit into the system that we run here well. You can tell that there's a lot of talent, just doesn't fit the system. But every time he's come on, except for maybe twice, he has gotten a yellow card because he is used to playing in the first tier Slovenian football, where he would just handle a person, throw him to the ground, and score because they did they didn't care. It's whatever. Like they're in Slovenia. They didn't whatever. And so they've actually started calling that stuff. And I could tell that was really frustrating him because he was like, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing what I've always done. And a guy that I also want to bring up, because Cavasel, I mean, if Legion fans want to just go look at just some film of this guy, just look at any highlights of this dude. He's the real deal. There's journeymen like Sadiq Babare, who came in for the Legion, who has been a journeyman across Europe and everywhere else. That's one level of journeyman, but he's been a England journeyman. which I think that should tell you the level of talent that Kyle Vassell is. But there's a guy that I think everybody who's been around the USL understands now that I have an undying passion and love for. And it's a guy that Legion fans have heard about because when we were up in the air with the Johnny Dean situation, with is he coming back? Is he not coming back? Is he going to be in Nashville? What's going on? I was out, kind of doing a little scouting on some fullbacks. And I saw that Indy 11 had released a guy that I had enjoyed watching that frankly, he was the best player on a pretty rough Indy 11 side. You can look at other names and say they're obviously better, but if you watch the film, this guy was the best guy out there, and he was there right back most of the time, and that's Nick Moon. He went from playing kind of that fullback role, so he's been up now into the midfield area. He's been playing kind of a left wing most of the time for you guys, or at least he did against against that match against Colorado Switchbacks. Um, he's a guy that's a ton of talent that goes so under the radar, and I'm really not sure why.
Yeah, it's funny because they announced him as a defender yesterday. We're like, defender? Loyal has kind of shifted kind of to like a straight up three back with wing backs, and your wing backs are Jack Blake and Nick Moon, who I don't think anyone would describe either of those two guys as wing backs.
No.
But that's kind of how they've been rolling as of late, especially in that San Antonio match. The Monterey one, Jack Blake was drifting inside a little bit more, and Evan Conway was kind of on that outside. But Nick Moon has played right back with the injury of Jack Metcalf, and that kind of opened some eyes, I think, for San Diego fans and for Nick Moon, that he is actually a pretty good defender on the wing. And that's kind of where he played on San Antonio or against San Antonio. But then he's also like one of the furthest forward guys on that left hand side as well, because Elijah Martin has that cover. But I think he gets overlooked because he's not getting on the score sheet as much as maybe you would like him to. But what he brings is he stretches the play out. He's a really good one-on-one attacker. He puts the defenders under a lot of pressure. And I think what he does is opens up the play for some of these other offensive guys to kind of get their looks. So like I said, he's got 1 goal and 4 assists. So like those numbers aren't like, oh my God, it's amazing. But he plays such a really important role because you have to pay attention to Nick Moon, and you have to pay attention to Jack Blake, and you have to pay attention to Kyle Vassell. And Nick Moon's been really, really good on that left side since he shifted over. There's a few issues. Sometimes he gets a little bit loose with the ball and can turn the ball over from time to time. But as far as an attacking player, he adds that width on the right. Jack is over on the left, and it just really stretches these defenses in a way that makes it very difficult to defend. Now, Monterey Bay, when you pack like 5-6 guys in the box, you have to get a little bit more creative with the crosses, low, high, switch the play a lot. But Nick Moon has been very, very impressive and very fun to watch as an attacking player. And then we were joking like, oh, he announced as a defender, and he had a really, really clean slide tackle kind of in the defensive third. I'm like, well, there's the defender, Nick Moon. And you talked to him and Blakey about it, and they're both kind of the same thing. Like, hey, we're having to adjust and learn this kind of new skill, but we're happy to do it. Nick Moon has played a kind of a wing back position in his past, so it's just kind of rediscovering that play. And it just shows like that two-way player that's what opens up Loyal's offense, is those offensive players are also falling back and defending pretty well.
For a lot of fans, I feel like this is ringing some alarm bells. Maybe not alarm bells, but like, whoa, light bulb moment. If you want a comp of Nick Moon, honestly, he plays the same role and has many of similar skill sets as a guy like Johnny Dean. He's not as fast as Johnny, but he has a little bit better hold up play than Johnny. If you want a guy who is going to be able to exploit the wings and open up an entire offense from the wingback position. Him and Johnny Dean are really good comparisons. And it's a big reason why I said that Nick Moon would be a perfect replacement for him if that were to come to be. And now we're going to see those guys go one on one. If he's playing that left wing back, left wing position, we're going to be seeing him and Johnny going at it all night. And that's a really cool matchup. While Kyle Vassell versus probably more than likely Fanwell Kavita is going to be a really cool matchup. Two of the more physical players in the league. Fanwell Kavita doesn't win a lot of tackles, but that's because he doesn't have to. He is an expert at shielding and making the ball go out on its own. There's no real stat line for that gets kept easily. But a battle between him and Kyle Vassell of Fanwell and Kyle is going to be incredible. But this Nick Moon, Johnny Dean, if you want a wide area, a nice little like watch along, just put like an all 22 like they do in the NFL and just zoom in on the Loyal left, the Legion right side, and just watch those two go at it all night long. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah, Nick Moon's not going to beat you for pace a lot, but he is really good, like as a vertical attacker, and can beat his guy one on one, and that's kind of what Loyal use him as, is kind of like this one on one. It's almost like ISO ball for a second, and then if he can beat you to the touchline, he crosses it, back across the box where you got, a multitude of opportunities. But he also a very smart player, understands that space and keeps wide so they can overload one side, and he kind of stays out to the opposite side for those open position plays.
I mean, there's just like you said, there's so many players that you can point at here. I mean, Colin Martin, you mentioned him as well. Jack Blake, obviously, Evan Conway, Thomas Among, great players. But like, listen, Elijah Martin and Koke Vegas are two incredible players. I mean, what a 1-2 combo to have in the back, right? Of one of the better defenders in the league, on top of another a bit underrated keeper to me. Koke is a really good player. He has his moments where it's like, all right, we're a little afraid, but it always feels like in the big moments when it's the 80th minute and you have a one-on-one, it always feels like he makes the save. It always feels like he does it when it matters. And most of the time, he doesn't even have to do it because guys like Elijah Martin are just cleaning it up before it ever gets to him.
Yeah, Elijah's a pretty special defender. He gives up a lot of height, but his pace, his recovery, his tackling is really, really smart. He's only 5'6", but he is like, it's hard to say like, oh, he's a fan favorite. He's for sure a fan favorite. Just his hustle, his early play against Solomon Asante when they played Phoenix. Like, Solomon Asante has never done any damage against Loyal, and that's that matchup against Elijah Martin. Really smart defender. Understands that he's not going to win headers, but his positional play is nice. Koke can be an aggressive goalkeeper. I think he does a lot of good work with his feet. Maybe a little bit unfortunate with some of the statistics early in the season, where San Diego was kind of trying to figure out this back line with the loss of Josh Yarrow, which was a huge loss, right? We talked about all these offensive upgrades. That's kind of one of the big step backs for Loyal, is losing a pretty much an MLS caliber center back, and replacing him with, Kyle Adams is a really good center back, but he's not quite the same as Josh Yarrow. Kyle's really good in the air. Not as much of a pacey guy as Yarrow was. Yarrow was great in the air and was fast. So there's a little bit of a step back with the back line. I think it's what we see with Loyal's propensity to give up some goals. Not very many clean sheets this year, although 2 in the past 2 games. But that's more of an anomaly than a what is that, a pattern, if you will.
Right.
So Koke, I really like the way he plays. He's very aggressive. He comes and gets balls. He comes and gets crosses. He's a really good keeper. A crazy signing, and his story is unique. He was playing in Spanish football, and kind of right at the very end of the transfer season, they signed a guy and he was the low man on the totem pole and got released and was trying to find a team. And we were lucky enough to have him. Super nice guy. His English, he tries really hard, but he's a good solid goalkeeper. Maybe not like the best in USL, but I think he's slowly getting more confident. Um, but yeah, we talked about Colin Martin, Charlie Adams. Those middle two midfielders are really how the offense moves from defense to offense. Colin Martin is probably one of the best technical players on the team. Really controls the pace, can slow things down, speed things up. Really smart, breaks up play, knows how to get that smart yellow card on a tackle, but also kind of knows how to not to get them from time to time. And then Charlie Adams is actually moving forward more. He's the kind of guy I would take a look at if Charlie's floating to the top of the box, Loyal is playing the way they want to play. If Charlie's getting pinned back because Birmingham is kind of putting San Diego under pressure, then that's where you know that maybe San Diego isn't quite as happy. Really good defender, but when he gets into that attacking third, his crosses in are something to be amazed. Like just the way he puts the weight on it, it drops right in for players. But yeah, that back line, Elijah Martin, Hustle, Kyle Adams, great in the air. Grant Stoneman is he's been since day one. And he's been kind of that guy who's seen them through, Joe Greenspan being signed at the beginning and then getting hurt, and Grant Stoneman having to step up after coming up from League One. Him and Elijah have kind of really been the rocks in that back line for San Diego. And Grant Stoneman's not afraid to get a yellow card and be aggressive.
By the way, for people who are wondering about Charlie Adams, he is San Diego's number 6 and captain on the team. He plays a similar role if you want before the tactical shift that Legion had. He plays a similar role to a guy like an Enzo Martinez. Sometimes he floats out wide a little bit. Sometimes, he plays a little bit deeper. But when rolling right, he's kind of that shadow striker role where he makes a late run to the top of the box and is just there. Also, he takes all the pins, I think, for San Diego. So
He's taken over that job duty because scoring penalties. So San Diego got one penalty last year and he took it and scored it. This year, Kyle Vassell had a couple and he didn't do as well on that. So I think if he's on the pitch, I think he's going to be the guy now again.
we did talk about the defense being a little bit shaky at times. And with Legion implementing this new very high press system, one that's not like it's not like a San Antonio where it's the press and counterattack kind of system. Counterattacking can be a part of it, but they're more like the way we played against Atlanta United too, which grain of salt, obviously, but they did. They pinned them back. They didn't let the other team even have a chance to get out of their own half. Really high press, similar to 2021 Louisville City almost. Um, how does San Diego really handle that press normally?
I think this is kind of I don't want to say the beauty of the 3-man system that they run is they try to create numerical advantages in all parts of their buildup. You have your 3-back system, which gives you one more option in the back line. And then sometimes Koke will come out and it'll actually feel like he's the second center back. And so you have your 3 center backs and Koke kind of rolling a 4-back. And then it's what space are you going to give them? Are you going to, who is the pressing trigger? And then either Colin or Charlie will drop in to give us another outlet. So the idea is that there's always one more player than they try to put one more player than the defending side. So they always try to build that numerical advantage. And and this is the beauty of a guy like Kyle Vassell or Evan Conway or Thomas Among is if they're in a bind, you can route one it and just kick it long, and hopefully Kyle Vassell gets on the end of something. You know what I mean? Like, so they can. Some players are less press resistant than others, depending on who starts. They rotated pretty heavily on the back half of this match. They got up one and made a bunch of substitutes. But trying to create that numerical advantage in the back so they can play out patiently and wait for the press to come and then kind of play where you're opening up. But I've also seen teams that were able to, like Las Vegas did to them a little bit too, where they were able to pin them back. And I'm not happy when Loyal's pinned back because I don't think they like to defend. They can, but that's not where their strength lies. But as soon as they have an opening, they're gonna either pump it long or they're gonna kick it as far into the stands as possible to kind of break up that. If they're in a trap, they're not gonna to play a dangerous ball. Although some of the subs certainly tried to give me a heart attack last night playing some pretty sloppy balls. So there is some mental mistakes that they can make if you put them under pressure. And that's been kind of the Achilles heel for this team is really well defended. And then they just have a brain fart. And then all of a sudden somebody's in and then that's it. Right. And that's kind of the danger of playing that 3-back system is if you miss on some of that counter press, you're now it's one less defender to beat, and that's kind of the danger, right? Like guys having to recover quickly, like Stoneman and Elijah Martin on the outsides. But so there is something you can probably get out of a press, but Loyal tries to create as many options as possible to be as press resistant as possible.
And that's really interesting to hear. The thing that I guess would worry if I was a Loyal fan, you kind of talked about it yourself. When you talk about the always want to have one more man in the press, that can cause a team to get stuck in too far forward or too far backward and having people in no man's land or just having, obviously every tactic has a weakness somewhere. And that idea that might be where it is. Guys like Marlon Santos, who's been USL for a while now with FC Tulsa, is our best friend. And for people who don't watch the USL show, listen, FC Tulsa and the USL show have a very strange relationship, and that's fine. Um, but um, that's always one of those things that it creates advantages in some places. Obviously, there's weaknesses everywhere. But when you mention the defending, something that I think fans of Legion who maybe didn't watch the match might point to is earlier this season, San Diego decided to take a L in the soccer wars before they even knew it started, and it was a 5-0 loss to Los Dos. But it that one was shrouded in controversy very early, and I feel like you can explain it well, but that's not a result that Legion fans can really hold a hat on and say just do what they did.
No, I would if you're looking for a game on how to like 11v11 beat Loyal. I think the most recent one is the 2-1 loss to Vegas, um, where you have a really hot goalkeeper. You're keeping them off there because they're going to get their chances, right? But that game was you really frustrate them. You take advantage of your opportunities when you have them. Yeah, the 5-0 loss to Los Dos was I wouldn't even say a questionable handball because that would be giving too much credit to the referee. Like the red card was overturned the next week. It was basically, Kyle Adams, who is kind of the center back, right? Like he is the guy that we're relying on to anchor that 3-man back line. Very early on, 11th minute, gets a red card handball for a ball that hits off his chest. Penalties scored. They're down 1-0. They don't quite make the substitution that they need to make in time. Los Dos goes up 2-0 on a Preston Judd goal. Then they make the change, and they just never quite recovered. And this is one of those games where it's just like it just didn't go their way. They weren't. San Diego likes to play with possession, so anytime they're out of possession a lot, They just don't play really well. Um, this is one of those. Hey, it was just a tough day on the job, and these games happen from time to time. You hate for them to happen at home, and against a pretty competent Los Dos team that can really attack you well. Preston Judd gets a 2 goals and an assist. There's an own goal in there toward the end with a guy who really hasn't played much since, in Nico Boxall. So there was just a lot. It was just pretty much the worst case scenario for Loyal against Los Dos. And this is one of the things that is a problem with San Diego from time to time is um, when things are going well, they're a really tough team to beat. When things aren't going well, sometimes they can get a little bit frustrated and in their head and not have the best match. But it's I think if you've been a fan of a sports team for longer than 5 minutes, you've seen your team absolutely poop the bed against somebody that they probably should have done something against. Same thing with that Lou City game is, it just, they're playing with some, not their preferred starting 11. They had a pretty decent match for the first chunk of it, and then the wheels just fell off. And that can happen. So if Birmingham scores, they need to keep the pressure up because that's how you beat Loyal. Is you build on you hit them hard and then you build on that momentum. But I think if you don't go for the jugular, Loyal are gonna just keep coming at you.
So this is shifting the conversation entirely. Is this the first time Landon Donovan has coached against one of his former U.S. men's national team teammates? Because I've tried to do a little bit of digging and I couldn't find anybody.
Did you play with Eric Winalda? Was there an overlap there?
I, if there was, it would had to been less than a year.
That was the only one I can think of. Was Winalda? Maybe Trundolo, with Las Vegas would be the other one that would come to mind like right away. Um, but I think that would be it. The only two.
Because I mean, it's a really interesting place for guys like, I mean, both Landon and Juan Agudelo to be in. Because Juan Agudelo, he he played well when he was with the U.S. men's national team, youngest goal scorer ever. Not only did he play with Donovan, but he was in the same like room as him when it comes to sharing pitch space, both as forwards. I I'll be very interested to see how I maybe how that happens pre or post match. Not saying they're going to get into a full on fist fight, obviously, but that's an interesting place to be in, is knowing that you were competing for a spot against each other. Now you're actually competing against each other. I'm sure it's all love, but it's still going to be a very interesting conversation to see.
Yeah, they're mine. Like Winalda played through 2000, and Landon Donovan started in 2000 for the national team, so there might have been a little bit of overlap. But for sure, Trundolo and Donovan played. Trundolo was 99 to 2012. Um,
He-
but yeah, I think the thing that when you interview Landon Donovan, even talking about like Frank Yallop last night, was I think he has a lot of respect for people who play the game well, who are trying to get into coaching. I think there's some folks who think Landon Donovan can be kind of insincere and maybe fake, but I've seen him be nothing but genuine and open and welcoming. Always takes his time with the fans. I think you'll notice that too. Like if there's an opportunity for like autographs and stuff, he almost always takes the opportunity to engage young fans. Um, so I would, in the 90 minutes that you're playing against each other, there's for sure like that opposition and I want to beat you. Probably particularly because they were teammates, right? There's going to be a little bit of maybe like a little bit of trash talk. But I would, it would be out of character, I think, for him to be, unless there's something there that I just don't know about, right? Like a personal beef or, someone got like stole their girlfriend or whatever. But he always seems to be very genuine. He very respectful, wants the other coaches and players to be successful in the long run, because I think he realizes that USL is a place of growth for a lot of people, coaches and players. And he's been very complimentary of folks. I've never heard him really call out a coach for being for anything. Maybe the Phoenix situation's the only um, example of maybe where it wasn't that case, but I think that's some extenuating circumstances, and I think maybe I'm not sure Shantz and Donovan really like each other. But I think that's the only really example of when I've noticed that maybe there's a little bit of coldness there. I think he has a lot of respect for folks in the league.
Man, and I was thinking about this too, and I feel like this is a little bit of a segue before we get to the final part of the show. But how different this match would be hyped up if Legion did not just sell Junior Flemings. This would be a very different match, and I know, we don't need to go very deep into it, but man, that when it comes to hype around a match, it's for all the wrong reasons, but this week has Louisville City versus, Tampa Bay Rowdies and, Area Code versus the Riverhounds, and I think that if we didn't sell Junior and we retained him, this might be the biggest match of the week.
Yeah, it's a hard one to hype when we're at this point of the season where everyone's trying to jockey for playoff positions, and it's an East-West conference game where yeah, it's 3 points, but that Lou City Tampa Bay is a 6 point game. Memphis Riverhounds is a 6 point game. But yeah, I think that would have been the natural go to. And I'm sure there would have been like think pieces and interviews between the two of them, and if they buried the hatchet or whatever. Um, it would have for sure been an easy storyline to hype. But I think the biggest thing now with this one is it is an intriguing matchup, right? Loyal is on a hot streak. Birmingham is also on a pretty good run of form as well after, you know, being pretty inconsistent early in the season. So, like, I think for USL fans, it's a very intriguing matchup because it is, again, like a strong team in the West going east. And can they hang in the hot weather that they're going to be playing in Birmingham? And, there's this like feeling of the West is better than the East this year, but this could be a very, we talked about statement wins against San Antonio. For Birmingham right now, this could be a huge statement win, like especially if Pittsburgh loses to Memphis 901, you know, Birmingham has a chance to leapfrog them. Or if Memphis 901 loses, now you're, only a point behind and you're really fighting for a home playoff match, which, I think most USL followers would have probably not pegged, the three Sparks to get there. So I think this is a huge game that is under the radar that I think people are secretly very intrigued by, but it's not going to be as sexy as Lou City Tampa Bay for sure. But I do think it is, like, even without the Junior Flemings, it is one of the more interesting and hard to predict matches. You
Yeah.
got a team playing midweek traveling east on a day rest, and then one day of getting ready for Birmingham. It's gonna be an easy, or it's not gonna be easy. Sorry, I've just texted sushi and my brain went to easy. Uh, but I think Birmingham can get something out of this match and put a statement down that says, if you're coming here, this is going to be a tough place to play, and you're not going to want to come here. So, um, I'm pretty stoked about this one for obvious reasons. I think if I was a neutral fan, uh, to me, this is, I would put top three games I would watch this. I would put top two. I think it's more intriguing than the Memphis Pittsburgh Riverhounds one. That's important. But I think as a kind of a matchup of teams playing well, interleague play, I think it has a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, I mean, this one is, like you said, just really intriguing for a lot of reasons. It There's a lot of storylines about the East versus West here that if Legion can pull off a win, it's like, whoa, what's going on with the West? Because I mean, San Antonio just struggled with Loudon, a Loudon team who decided to go out and beat Los Dos out of solidarity with their, former independent USL teams. I don't know. Soccer wars are wild. And I don't know. This one's a really interesting one when it comes to that front. And I mean, like you said, these are two teams that have never played each other. They don't know how they're going to play. It's going to be really fun. For Legion fans, this feels like a match that could end up being a real statement win for other reasons. Legion have beat Charleston Battery at home, which who hasn't? They beat Memphis 901 at home, but even then, even though that was an incredible home win and that was an incredible moment, and honestly, the Anderson Siadu goal, I do think is one of the best Birmingham sports moments ever. It against a big rival, last minute game winner from the fan favorite. Yeah, I mean, that's a top moment. But even then, it felt a little fluky because it happened so strangely. It didn't come from dominating the other team, blowing it against FC Tulsa, not scoring and drawing against the Lights, and drawing against I'm blanking on who they were now. Another draw that was in there, the Miami FC matches that Legion dominated, but got nothing out of. And now they got these two big wins against MLS2 teams, but I mean, I get 3 points or 3 points, but we all know that's not quite the same. If Legion are able to go out and get a win against a should be one of the title favorites this year and Loyal, and even do it in a not even dominating score line, but just dominating how they want to play, that's a major message sent to Legion fans to, hey, come out to home matches, support the boys. This is a different team. So I think that's a really interesting, kind of narrative that Legion fans are going to be really interested in. And, they win this match. You don't want to, but maybe you can afford the slip up against another team. Maybe you can afford to slip up against, Detroit City or Memphis, which you don't want to because you are jockeying for those home matches. But you also have to think if Legion can beat Loyal in the next week, you have matches against Detroit City and Memphis 901. That if you can beat Loyal, that sends you all sorts of confidence and over the moon that you can beat anybody. So that's massive. But you did mention predictions, and I know we did them on the USL show, but you know, how do you think this is going to go?
I mean, Loyal it doesn't play the game of we're going to play different on the road than at home. They try to play the same way. So if you're on the fence about coming onto this one, you're going to see a team that's going to try to attack like a lot of teams don't on the road. So it'll be a fun match to watch, regardless. Um, I think it's going to be a tough one for Loyal to get up for. So they're probably going to be a little bit weaker at the back, but I think that they can score some goals. I think on two balls I said 2-2, but I know how much you hate draws, so I picked the Loyal win on the USL show, uh, just because. Also because the executive person, the guy who owns Loyal, Andrew Vasiliadis, tells me that he pays attention to what I pick, and so I always feel I have to pick Loyal just to make sure I get credentialed every week. Um, but I think I think this has the potential of being draw. I can see Birmingham getting something out of it if they can defend really well and keep Loyal to one. Um, I think if Birmingham can get to two, they're going to get points out of this one. Um, and so I on two balls and a mic, I said a 2-2 draw. Seemed like it was a pretty the way that San Diego has been playing, they're going to get their chances, and they'll just have to finish. But I also think that they can be susceptible to some of the aggressiveness that Birmingham played with and has continued to play with recently. That they're going to put some pressure, and I think they're going to get some turnovers, and they're going to probably capitalize on those turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, this one feels like a draw to me as well. Um, that said, I picked Loyal on the USL show, and the big reason was I haven't seen Legion play well at home. And I get that the Atlanta United 2, the Loudon wins, people are going to look at me and be like, "Are you crazy?" But look at when we didn't play MLS 2 teams at home. Against, if I remember correctly, and I did this stat recently, Legion have played 52 matches at home now in the leagues in the team's history, and now they have 10 wins of more than one goal. So a 2-goal differential between the two. And of those wins, only 3 have come against non-MLS 2 teams. So 7 of those have been against 2 teams. We just don't seem to dominate non-2 teams. I think, and granted, it's hard to get a multiple goal win. I understand that. It's a hard league. It's a hard sport. But until I see Legion really go out there and truly be competitive for a full 90 against a good team, I find it so hard to pick them at home. Picking them at home against Atlanta United 2 and Loudoun United is not exactly a hot take, but picking Legion against Tulsa at home should have been an easy pick, and Legion did crap all with it. Um, I don't know. This is one that until I see it, I'm going to pick against Legion, and that sounds harsh, but as a fan and also as somebody who's been following the team a little bit closer than the average fan, I suppose, that's just how I kind of look at it.
Yeah, I think statistically, Birmingham has gotten more points on the road than at
Yeah.
home, points per game. It's about average, and this is what's what is I think maybe exciting for a Legion fan is how well they've performed on the road. Because you're gonna, I think Three Sparks are gonna make the playoffs for sure. You got a really good shot if they can keep this form up. Uh, but the way they've been able to play on the road, I think, has been pretty cool for them, and because they're gonna have to go on the road in the playoffs, and they've been pretty successful. So I think there's a lot of hope for Birmingham Legion fans, regardless of how this one game goes. And it's out of conference, so you're not worried about like tiebreakers or anything like that. And I think you're still in touching distance, regardless of the Pittsburgh 901 outcome. If they draw, then great. They only move 1 point up. If one of them loses, you're right there for a home playoff match, which again, like for Three Sparks fans, I think is something to celebrate, particularly how the season started. The fact that your club is moving in the right direction at the right time, is something that to be excited about, and I think it's something that loyal fans need to be cognizant of. Is this team is on the right trajectory? Yeah, it's MLS 2 teams, but I mean, San Diego's played MLS 2 teams and they haven't done as well, right? They got blown out by Los Dos. They had a tough match against New York Red Bulls. Even against Tulsa in Tulsa, they didn't play particularly well. So I think that Birmingham, knowing Loyal's on short rest traveling east, they have an advantage here, and I like I said, I think Birmingham has to be ruthless in this match, because I think they can get something out of it. To be frank.
Well, listen, man, this has been an awesome conversation. I've been waiting for a long time for, anybody on for us to for Legion to play anybody that's on the USL show with other people because I love talking to you guys, but it just seems like all you guys are either, John, who I mean, he's kind of indie, kind of everybody, and everybody else is kind of West Coast or Western Conference people, aside from Ryan, who Wilmington are going to win the league in 2024. Um, just go ahead and mark it down now. But I don't know. I've been super stoked for this one. So for people who want to listen to your takes a little bit more, listen to more content that you do, or even just find you on socials, where can they find you?
You can find me at Underwood 48 on the Twitter machines. That's where I do most of my posting. I have a Facebook, but I barely use it, and my Instagram was like hacked like a year ago, so I was like, I guess I don't have Instagram anymore. You can find again USL show, uh, Orange and Black Soccer Cast, and then Two Balls Underwood. Those are all on podcast streaming, and also most of those end up on YouTube as well.
Beautiful, man. Well, thank you once again, Alan. Obviously, I hope Legion win. That would be awesome. But, just in general, I hope everybody has a good time,
I hope everyone has fun.
Well, thank you, Alan. To everybody who listened for a full hour, appreciate you. Means a whole lot. Um, if you are interested, the YouTube channel Hammering Down is now has a StreamYard account, which means there's going to be more live streams coming, which means this one, this podcast itself is being uploaded to YouTube. So that's awesome. Now the YouTube channel is not completely dead. So just absolutely incredible stuff. But thank you once again, Alan. To everybody who is from Loyal Land, listen, I hope that you guys tear it up in the West. I hope Fernando Tatis hits all the homers, and I hope Juan Soto stops running into walls. I appreciate everybody for listening, and until next time, guys, keep hammering on.